What was the first thing Tina was thinking when she met me in high school? What are Christian and Hamilton looking for in a wife? What is it really like to serve in politics behind the scenes? These and many more questions, ranging from everything from cryptocurrency to who we would take with us on a desert island. These are some of the probing questions that our audience has been asking us and demanding that we answer. And today we're going to do just that. We have about 30 questions for which Tina thinks there is no possible way we will get through because I filibuster everything. But today I'm going to prove her wrong. Probably not. And we're going to do all of that and more on this episode of Making the Argument, powered by Good Ranchers.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Making the Argument. If you haven't already, I hope you will go down to the link in the description, join our community chat, because some of these questions came directly from there. We have a lot of really neat things coming up. And if you have any thoughts on our community chat, you're welcome to DM me there. Give me your thoughts, feedback, whatever you'd like to see, and we'll make that happen.
As always, I'm your host, Nick Freitas. With me in the studio, my beautiful bride, Tina, Queen of the Bees.
Hello, everyone.
And then, of course, we have our resident historian and political prognosticator, Christian Hines.
I'm doing well. Oh,
And
wait,
then-
you didn't even ask how I was doing.
didn't.
I just
That's
said
okay.
it.
I just notified everyone you were here. You just presumed that I cared.
It
Anyway,
was the burning question.
and then, of course, back in the studio, our producer of producers, the good Hamilton, the one that doesn't like central banking. How you doing, buddy?
It is a pleasure to be back in the studio with everyone and be back on the episode. Thank you for having me.
Great. Why don't you explain your absence to everyone?
I got fired.
That's true.
We had so many production problems that it just got to a point where I had to get fired.
That's right.
But anyway,
He's kidding. He's kidding.
I am kidding. I absolutely.
You
You
can't.
said that so seriously.
I know.
You can't fire the co-owner of the company.
That's
You
true.
just-
This is why we have him. He doesn't even get his own like high back chair anymore. Like sit there in your chair with your crappy
sit
mic.
at the end of the table. No, we've had a lot of really neat things going on with the team, with our community, with different partnerships with various companies, and I ended up moving to North Carolina in January, and so I've been working remotely. We've had some great production help from Nate, taking over that responsibility, and that's been fantastic. But there's been a lot of things for me to focus on outside of the podcast, ensuring that the business can grow, ensure that everybody's bills can get paid. So that's been a pretty big responsibility, and it's been a lot of fun, but unfortunately I've had to pull back from the podcast a little bit. But don't worry, I'm still here. Didn't get fired. Everything's going to be fine.
He's trying to find a wife.
He didn't get fired yet.
He's in North Carolina looking for his wife.
He is.
I am.
He is. But we're going to get to that. We're going to
We
get
will.
to that.
We
Okay.
will.
Okay. So the following questions have come to us at different points. Basically, again, from our audience, from people commenting on YouTube, Circle, all of it. And so we try to go through and combine a bunch of these and just kind of have a fun episode going through a variety of various questions. And so the first question that we have, this is for the entire crew. We're each going to go through. Don't take a long time. Don't be Nick Freitasing this and taking forever to respond. The first question we'll go around is, what is the biggest conspiracy theory you actually believe? And I'm going to start with Christian because I think Christian is the most prepared for this
I know
question.
exactly what Christian's going to say.
Yeah, I do too.
I want to hear your guess, Tina. What do you think I'm going to say?
You're going to say aliens.
Definitely aliens.
Oh, well, I wasn't originally going to say that, but yeah, that's okay. It's not that I believe in aliens. It's that I believe that, David Grush was telling the truth when he came out with his allegations that we ended up doing a podcast on last year.
You actually think it's someone jumping through the quantum wormhole from the past or future.
I think that theoretically speaking, because space-time, Einstein's theory of general relativity, like for you to travel faster than light also implies the ability to time travel because space and time are two sides of the same coin.
So you don't think it's little green men. You think
It could be us from the future. As crazy as that sounds, again, if you're capable of faster than light travel, you are capable, according to our understanding of physics, of time travel.
Us from the future. Let's unpack that. No, wait. We don't have time to unpack.
All right, Tina, since you spoke up, what is the biggest conspiracy theory you believe?
Okay. I have a hard time with this one because I'm not to make anybody feel bad, but I don't believe the earth is flat and I don't believe chemtrails are a thing. I do believe they do cloud seeding and stuff, but I don't believe they're doing all this mind control stuff. But I do think that the government has been heavily involved in our food situation. And they're heavily involved in trying to get people to, eat like a soy boy. And
so you don't just think that was like bad science or corporations manipulating the process. You think the government was like, yeah, what we need is more.
Well, who put out the food pyramid?
Well, yeah, but the argument is that they put it out that way because the grain industry and whatnot was heavily influenced.
Right. So who did the grain industry
the government
donate to in order to? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, I think there's a conspiracy there. I also I don't know. Like, there's so many good conspiracies.
So basically,
how dare you make me pick? Like, I do think the Clintons murdered people. I definitely think Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. And I think he might have actually been an agent for the government to entrap people.
So you think aliens built the real pyramids and the government built the food pyramid?
I never said anything about the pyramids, but that's a really interesting question. I'm not willing to. I'm not willing to say that I believe one way or the other on the pyramids, but definitely, like, as far as the conspiracies go that we're kind of looking at right now, yeah, I think there's a lot of conspiracies that have just turned out, or conspiracy theories that have just turned out to be conspiracies.
We will probably do a whole episode on like top 10 of our favorite conspiracy theories.
It's hard for me to pick one because so many of them have just been proven right.
Oh, and you didn't pick just one. We asked for one. You gave us like 7. But
well, I have to get ahead on the filibustering because I know you're going to beat me out on that one.
I'm going to be quick on that. All right, Hamilton, what's your favorite, biggest conspiracy theory?
I hesitate to bring it up because I don't have all the facts to back it up, but the assassination of John F. Kennedy, there was a lot of very interesting things that took place there. But I will say, I used to be a really big conspiracy theorist before 2020. And what actually, I think, brought me back to reality was actually being on your congressional campaign and being behind the scenes and seeing what I would typically think, oh, that's interesting. Why is he doing that? Or why is this person doing that? And actually seeing like, oh, we just weren't paying attention to whatever this little thing was. Yeah. And by no means was there an intentional decision made to say, like, for instance, after the campaign, you had left a congressional candidate in your Twitter bio and you just forgotten to take it out.
Yeah.
And so it's stuff like that I was like, okay, well, it's likely that a lot of these things that I'm like, oh, that's interesting, somebody wasn't looking at it.
Yeah, I would have to say, having worked in politics for a while, I do think there's something to say that you can chalk a lot more up to just blatant incompetence than you can. Like the more elaborate the conspiracy theory is, the less likely I am to believe it because it would require intelligence to pull that off. And okay, so mine is actually, this is going to sound like totally cheap, but it's Kennedy. I totally think
you can't pick the same one.
I don't. Well, no. Look, I don't. Okay, I'll do
Nick
a secondary.
has a lot more to say on this.
I'll do a secondary one. I don't think it was like just this or that or what. Like I don't think any of the explanations are that easy. But I definitely think the government was in on it in some capacity. I don't know if Johnson was a part of it, but I definitely. I'm sorry. I just have a hard time believing it was just the mob or it was just this. And the way they handled things with the killing of Jack Ruby and all. It's like, I'm sorry. The government had something to do with this. I don't know what
killing of Lee Harvey Oswald by Jack.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, Jack Ruby killing Harvey, and then Ruby also
he died of cancer while he was being tried for murdering.
Yeah, he also said you're never going to know what'll happen here. But I will say this: my guilty pleasure conspiracy theory is definitely the pyramids. Like there is, and the only reason I say this is there's this really good film. It wasn't like Ancient Aliens or anything like that, but there was a really good film. And the narrator of it wasn't suggesting who built it. He was just suggesting that the current explanations we have for how it was built don't make a lot of sense when you look at the absolute precision and difficulty that would be necessary to build something like that in 20 years. And then when you look at the measurements and everything, like it's pretty, you can go down the rabbit hole a lot on the pyramids. And was it really a tomb or was it something else? Because it's not really constructed like a lot of the other tombs in ancient Egypt. So I just think it's a super interesting conspiracy theory. And I don't think Egyptologists know as much as they claim to know about, oh yeah, it was just built by people floating this stuff around. And then they use logs to roll these 2-ton blocks, 5,000 of them. Like I just, whatever. Okay. Next question for Nick and Tina. How did you guys meet and how did you know you were each other's the one?
Ooh.
I have another question on this because I think in the modern dating world, people expect to meet someone in 5 minutes and be like, oh yeah, they are a potential dating partner. And was that something that y'all felt in high school?
Well,
or?
keep in mind, we met in high school and we got married at 19 and 20. So we got married at like just under a year out of high school.
We were high school sweethearts, but not in such a way as you usually hear. We didn't date all the way through high school. We started dating about halfway through our senior year.
Because she was dating someone else that whole time.
Yeah. And so yeah, we met our freshman year of high school arguing there's even a picture of us in our yearbook arguing at the lake.
Yeah.
And we were arguing over politics. Of course, we were arguing over which of us was more conservative than the other.
Yeah.
What were the debates taking place?
Oh, it was all.
We agreed on a lot of stuff. One thing is Little Miss Self-Righteous over here. That's right. Beat you to it. Because she called me a self-righteous hypocrite in high school.
I did.
Little Miss Self-Righteous shows up to our Christian school and starts lecturing everyone how none of us should be dating. And then immediately starts dating this guy.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, when she first walked in, like, how quick did I know she was dating material? Well, I knew she was hot the moment I saw her.
Right.
And I thought, like, well, that's never going to happen. Right. And then she started, dating the rich guy. So no.
Oh, my God.
I'm not disparaging him. I'm just saying. But
Yeah.
she dated him. She dated him for most of high school. And then, senior year, we started dating. I didn't date a lot in high school.
Yeah.
I was not dating materially, apparently. according to the girls at my high school, I was apparently not. I was friend zone material. I was definitely friend zone material.
Yeah, well, I just dated the same guy off and on.
Yeah.
It was like whenever he decided he wanted to break up with me or whatever. And then he tried to get me back.
Yeah.
It was really stupid. It was high school stuff.
Yeah, but we
Yeah.
started. So when did I know? As far as we started dating our senior year, and I will say this: I had been, because I had always been the friend zone guy, and because I was like sick of it, and I always thought, because I really did, like from a very early age, I thought this. I had this very romantic idea of what a man was supposed to be, and a
Yeah.
man is supposed to be
Yeah.
chivalrous and open doors and pull out chairs and be brave and protect. And I'm thinking, yes, the girls will be into this. I have seen the movies from the 50s and this works. And it turns out, no, it does. It
Doesn't
did
work.
not work in
Doesn't
90s high school.
Yeah, because most of the girls want to be treated like crap.
That's what, okay.
It's so weird.
I'm watching.
It's so weird.
I'm watching like one of my good buddies. So if I was trying to be the model
Yeah.
of the gentleman, whatever, he was like, I'm going to be a player. And you know what I noticed? All the girls liked that. They didn't like the guy trying to be the gentleman. And I remember my senior year, I had just had enough. I was like, fine. If this is how girls want to be treated. And I couldn't really push myself to actually
Be
be that guy.
Yeah.
But I was definitely, Tina will, I think, admit it, like say this is true. With Tina, I was definitely more standoffish.
He was more guarded.
A lot
you
more
weren't
guarded.
standoffish. Give me a break.
Okay, I wasn't standoffish.
You were guarded though. Yeah.
I was
With
a lot
his
more
feelings.
guarded. Would not say I loved her. Would
Yeah.
not say anything like that.
What do you think about the predicament
Cool.
for guys that want to be chivalrous but get put in the friend zone because they're not a player?
My problem is that I took chivalry and I was a little bit too eager and too awkward with it. What it should have been was it should have just been more of a, yes, I open doors. Yes, I treat a woman with respect, but I'm not a doormat.
And you're
I'm
not a
gonna,
simp.
I'm not a simp. I'm not a doormat. I'm not going to give you all my time. There was like a couple girls in high school that I liked that, again, got friend zoned hard and the whole deal.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was the backup guy.
Yeah.
And if I was even that, right? But whenever there was a problem, whenever there was an issue, all of a sudden,
you were the person they came to.
I was the little knight in shining armor. I was such a good listener. And I was all that
I
crap.
played the same role in high school.
Yeah, and here's what I will tell guys: like, be polite, be respectful, be chivalrous, be all those things. But you're not a doormat.
Mhm.
And the thing is that if she's not that into you, then you're not that into her. That's how it works. You're not going to win her over by being more into her than she is to you. That is not how this works. Women do like a chase.
That's how you get played.
That's how you get played. And so I actually did the right thing by being more guarded and not being as overt with my feelings or whatnot, and leaving something back until I was sure that she was into me. But where I really knew was I told Tina right before I went to basic training, you can date other people. Really didn't want her to. But again, I was not going to be that guy that got a Dear John letter in basic training. I was not going to be that guy that, we all sang about when we were doing military cadences about how your girl's cheating on you while you're in the Army. And so I just told her, like, I can't date other people. I'm going to be at Fort Benning, Georgia with a bunch of dudes. I will not be dating, right? You can do what you think. Because if she was going to do it, at least it was my idea, right? It wasn't me getting played. I wasn't being a chump or a simp. And as soon as I like flew into Georgia and was sitting there, I'm like, oh Lord in heaven, I hope she doesn't. And we talked the first time I got to talk to her on the phone. She was, right there and wrote me every single day in basic training. I had a letter for every single day I was in basic training in infantry AIT, and then she flew out to come and see me for my graduation. And that's when I first told her I loved her, is when she flew out to see me for my graduation. And because for me, that was kind of like a necessary test I needed to go through, was like, does this girl really love me? Yeah. Or is this just going to be fleeting the moment there's any sort of like trouble or difficulty in the relationship? Because it's not as if like the moment she stopped dating the guy she was dating in high school, every freaking dude was like, hey, Tina, let's go grab lunch. Hey, Tina, let's go do this. Hey, Tina. And so I knew that that's what was going to happen the moment I left for Fort Benning, Georgia. I knew that's what was going to happen.
No, most of them respected you, and like most of the guys that I actually talked to, respected you and wouldn't even.
Well, my buddy Eric Ewing. So Eric Ewing is we've been like just great friends ever since elementary school. He's the godfather to Lily. He was the best man at my wedding. Great dude. He also had my back. So like Tina's, was it the house flooded or you guys had to?
Growing up, our home flooded twice.
Yeah.
One of the times was when I had just graduated. Okay. So we graduated high school, the whole deal, and we were moving into a new house, and it wasn't built yet fully. So we were in an apartment with my parents and I in a little townhome in town.
Yeah.
And
so Eric's driving by and sees her car outside of this apartment in Chico. Right. Yeah. And that's not where she lives, Eric's thinking. So
he didn't know that we had moved.
Eric pulls up the door, sees Tina. Hey, what's going on, Tina? What's going on?
It was like this. He was like, he opens the door. I open the door. Hey, Eric. And he pushes the door open further and starts looking around inside like, hey, Tina, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you doing? I live here. What are you doing here? And he's like, you don't live here. I'm like, come on in.
Yeah.
Go ahead and look, see all the furniture. That's the furniture from the house.
And then he just like left, like, okay, cool.
Okay, cool. See you later.
That was my boy, man. Eric, I'm telling you right now, Eric's my boy. He would have thrown down in that house if a dude had been there. Somebody would have gotten thrown over a balcony.
Oh man.
It was
he
cool.
was a good friend.
All right. So that's me. That's when I knew. That's when I met Tina, when I knew she was the one. Go ahead, babe.
Well, your story's so much more exciting than mine. No, for me, it was actually a lot earlier than that. And so there was a point where I realized like you were going to go off to the Army, and and we weren't even really a thing. We flirted, but that's about it. And it just started to really bother me, this idea that I would never see you again. Like most likely would never see you again. And like, we're going to go on about our lives and never see each other again. And it just made me realize like, I got like a lot more going on for this guy, I think, than I should if we're just friends. And so it pretty much as soon as we started dating, I was like, that's
all it took, guys.
One of the things was watching, like you took me to be around your family and things like that. Took Pup and Papa's house, his grandma and grandpa, Pup and Papa. Yeah. And we would go over there, and your dad would come up from LA and bring all of the little kids, and Nick would be on the floor playing with all the little kids and all of that. And I loved that. And I loved his family. And like, I realized like,
I'm going to tell you,
this is like a whole package here.
We talked about this with Lauren Corbett as well, the Dadvocate. That discussion is going to be coming out later, but that was the thing that came up in our conversation as well. It's like, guys, I'm telling you right now, if you want to impress a girl, if you can demonstrate that you're good with kids, like you're attentive and like the whole deal, like if you can, They like it.
And I already knew Nick was a Christian because I had known him since 9th grade, and we went to a Christian high school. I already knew he was a Christian, so that wasn't one of the hurdles I had to jump over. It was more of personality wise and goal wise, like where are we?
Yeah.
You know.
So I was more guarded. But I'll tell you what I was. I'll tell you what I was not.
Oh, I fell in love with Nick so fast, and I knew I loved him for probably 5 or 6 months before he ever told me he loved me.
I knew I loved her. I just wasn't. I was holding back, man. I was playing it cool.
Playing it cool.
Yeah. I will tell you though.
And I didn't tell him until after he told me.
That's true. She did.
Because that's a rule. Girl, do not tell the guy first. Otherwise, he'll feel obligated to tell you whether he does or not.
It may not be true.
It may not be true. Do you want to be lied to?
Yeah.
I don't want to be lied to.
But if you want to talk about love at first sight, Good Ranchers. That's right. The first time I saw a Good Ranchers steak, I was like, that's the one. That's the one for me. And now, ahead of Father's Day.
They sent us a box. We cooked it all up.
Oh my gosh.
Had it all on a plate.
Like at once. They gave us a box for like, here's a month's worth of meat. I think you meant a weekend.
Right.
Because we decided we're going to try everything at once. But now I want you to understand something, because we have Father's Day coming up. And what do dads want? They want steak. That's what they want. And they want American-raised steak. And they want American-raised steak that doesn't have a bunch of crap injected into it, which is why you're going to go to Good Ranchers. You're going to use promo code Nick, and you're going to get, I'm going to read this off, the King Cut Box. That's right. Make sure your children present the father of your children with tribute this year. And the tribute will be 2 thick cut bone-in ribeyes, 4 center cut filet mignons, 2 thick cut bone-in New York strips. That's the King Box. It's a one-time order for Father's Day. I'm telling you, there just is no universe. There is no universe where you get him this and he's not happy about it. Plus, for the first time ever, if you sign up for one of the subscriptions, you're going to get free bacon with that subscription for as long as you have the subscription. That means free bacon that you didn't even order, but you wanted because it's bacon, right? Is coming with each order for your subscription forever. You keep the subscription forever, that's free bacon for life, people. Free bacon for life, brought to you by Good Ranchers. GoodRanchers.com, promo code Nick. Get the best American-raised beef, poultry, pork, wild-caught seafood, and now with free bacon for life. And again, don't forget about that deal for Father's Day. That's important.
Coming up fast.
Don't forget about that as I look over at Tina. Don't forget about that deal for Father's Day. Okay. Next question. This is a good one. This is a good one. We're going to put some people on the spot here because this question is specifically for Christian and Hamilton. Christian and Hamilton, what are you guys looking for in a wife? And I just want to point out that this question has been asked a few times in our community by some single ladies that I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, I'd like to take this from a slightly different angle first.
Okay. Go ahead. This better be good.
Is that okay?
It better be good.
Okay. Well, I had a friend send me a book, okay? It's called How to Get a Date Worth Keeping. And I thought it would be about, how to find the right date and everything like that. And it was actually a lot more applicable to my situation, which is like not being able to find someone to date at all. And how I had approached dating was that I need to figure out their values, their faith, where they land in politics, all of those things before I ask them on a date. And what ended up happening is that by the time I found out all those things, I had gotten friend zoned. Like it took too long to get all those answers and then ask them on a date. And so what this book really told me was like the first date doesn't have to be for marriage. It could be to get to know somebody, practice communication skills. For me, learn how to not be a butthole, inadvertently, and like I have no intention of being a butthole, but
sometimes it just happens.
Sometimes it just happens, and so
you don't even got to try.
And so my standards have not lowered, but my requirements for asking someone on a date has become
they've modified to something more reasonable,
right? And so again, that what happens when you require all of those things to be true and you found out, this could be a potential marriage partner, you raise the stakes on that first date to an unreal level.
Got it.
You're nervous about going on that date, and we've got to lower the stakes on that first date quite a bit. And so I've started asking a lot more women out on dates just anywhere. that is reasonable, of course.
There's this nice lady the other night on the sidewalk.
Well,
at
you can
midnight.
ask all those questions on the first date and get to know whether or not there should be a second date.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So that's your strategy. That is your new strategy for the dating.
Yes,
Okay.
I will say it has not worked out in many dates, but it has increased the frequency of attempts, which is it has to be
That's
present.
something. That's
Okay,
to be
but
present.
ultimately, what are you looking for in a wife?
Yes. Obviously, looking for someone who loves the Lord more than they're going to love their spouse, because that's going to be very important. Values and goals alignment for, are you interested in homesteading? Are you interested in homeschooling? Are you open to those ideas? Because I am very passionate about that. And, previously, probably 2 years ago, I was really into this idea that, I need to marry someone who's going to do business with me, who's going to help me, be an entrepreneur, who's going to be an entrepreneur with me. And I got to know a few women who, did have those qualities, who were very passionate about entrepreneurship. And I was like, well, I think I might want to rethink this, that I need someone who's going to help pull me out of the stress of the day-to-day rather than keep me in it all the time.
Yeah.
Because without that, I do keep myself in that mindset all the time and struggle to pull back for, a day, a weekend, a week, whatever, for vacation. And so, that's my answer to that for right now.
All righty. Christian already wrote out his answer. He said 6'5", trust fund, finance, blue eyes.
Wow.
No, all right. So what is your ideal wife?
I guess our children will actually look normal.
Have you not seen that song?
Have you not seen this trend?
He's not on TikTok.
No,
I
I'm not
forgot.
on TikTok.
Like digitally, Christian's a boomer. He is a digital boomer.
No, I'm on Twitter. I'm
Boomer.
I'm pretty spicy on Twitter.
That did not help your argument.
But oh man, I don't know where to start. I mean, I guess listing off like interests or things. I like ideally we're talking, right?
Yeah.
Somebody that's really into cooking, because I've gotten more into it. Not because I want them to cook everything for me, but because
Cooking, maybe being barefoot.
I mean, you know how much I love buffalo chicken backs.
Yeah.
right?
You want to
So
be able to cook together.
I want to be able to cook with
like
my
that
spouse
idea.
because I enjoy cooking.
That's good.
I'm thinking of like interests that I have that aren't just explicitly political, because everybody who knows me as the data guy and the Nick Freitas guy, and the balding guy.
That's not.
So like those are like usually the comments that are directed at me in terms of how I'm addressed, because that's how people know me. But like I have plenty of other interests that aren't political. So obviously I want somebody that shares my values politically, but in terms of interests, I want somebody that can cook because I enjoy cooking. My dream is to own a Victorian mansion one day and refurbish it with like period pieces. So I want somebody that's into that time period and into interior decorating to help me do that, because as a guy, I don't know anything about interior decorating, but I know a lot about history. And again, like that's a passion that I have, is I want to buy an old house and make it look like it did at the time.
so you want somebody that's excited by the prospect of bringing to life something like that.
I want somebody that's into romanticism as much as I am. I want somebody that's into impressionist paintings as much as I am. I want somebody that if they have any sort of interest when it comes to history, it's similar to me, where it's like they're really into 19th century European history. I want somebody that finds philosophical, abstract concepts like idealism as interesting as me. I want somebody that can have those philosophical and theological debates and discussions as much as I enjoy reading about them. I want somebody that enjoys reading in general as much as I do. I want somebody that can maybe get me back into playing the guitar again. I picked that up in high school and played it a little bit in college and dropped out of it.
I got news for you, dude. You pick up the guitar again, you might have a better shot of finding her.
Player love songs.
Can I say one thing too? We always give you crap about never leaving the house.
Yeah.
I think when you find the girl, which again, you're not going to find in the house.
Yeah.
But I think when you find the girl, I also think you will travel more.
Oh,
Yeah.
I enjoy traveling.
Yeah.
My father would tell you, despite the fact that we argue about politics all the time,
Yeah.
I actually enjoy traveling with him because he travels. We went to the UK and went all over the country, and I was posting all these pictures of like Warwick Castle and walking through Oxford and stuff like that. And I actually love traveling. The joke is that I'm a hermit that never leaves the house, which is true. But the paradox, because we're all paradoxes as humans, right? the paradox within me is that I actually enjoy traveling. So I would also want to find a partner that loves to travel as much as me as well. That enjoys some of these. You could argue that they're quirky things, but like I have all these other interests that I don't really get to talk about a lot on the show because our show's about politics, the culture war, elections, homeschooling, homesteading.
Mhm.
You know, things that are either political or political adjacent. Sometimes that overlaps with my interests, like
A
when
lot
we
of
talk about
history.
political philosophy and history, when we did that Rome episode, for example.
Yeah.
But you know, I have plenty of other interests that aren't explicitly political. I'm really into philosophy. I'm really into theology. I'm really into romanticism and impressionism and history and particular eras within history. And
So you're looking for an intellectual girl,
yeah.
wants to travel, restore some homes,
Yeah.
and cook together.
He's looking for like an intellectual match.
Yeah.
Do you have any physical attributes that you're hoping for?
That's a dangerous question.
Yeah, it is. Men are not allowed to answer that. Women can answer that question like that all they want. Men can't.
So
Can I say
some men like they want somebody who's just drop dead gorgeous. Some men are like, I want someone cute. Like there's a kind of
Can
a
I
difference.
just say right now, like, no, men are not allowed to answer this question without getting hate. I promise you, we're not allowed to answer it.
yes, to a point. I will answer it to a point.
Yeah.
I really like long hair. I remember as a kid, I would always ask my mother, like, why are you always putting your hair up? I like it when your hair's down.
Yeah.
And she always wore her hair up.
Yeah.
And like, I like longer hair on women. And I'm a huge stickler for actually ribbons in hair.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of a traditional, again, kind of Victorian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's
Victorian.
going to like all the pretty braids and the things that girls do with their hair. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think it's possible?
So he wants to marry Elizabeth Bennet. No.
Do you think it's possible that you could marry someone or be interested in someone who may not have the same passion for those areas, but may show interest in them?
Oh, sure.
Like
could
is willing to go along with you?
was willing to go along, but they also have their own passions and interests that probably not, but maybe you'd be interested in hearing about as well.
Yeah, I'm not looking to date the female Christian. I don't think there's enough space in this world for two Christians. So, like, to your point, like, yeah, they don't need to be like my exact carbon copy, but in the female form.
Yeah.
Like, I fully expect that they would have their own interests, and maybe they'd be, you know, maybe they're more into, you know, like Gothic style architecture rather than Victorian style architecture.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a weird example, but the point is that like there's as long as it's like somewhat related or it's relatable.
Yeah.
I have no problem if they have other interests. In fact, I hope they have other interests. I'd be interested. Like my ideal spouse would be somebody that would get me into other stuff that I didn't consider before.
He needs the girl from Wives and Daughters. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Oh man. Okay. There, was that Gaskell?
Elizabeth Gaskell. Yeah.
Was it Gaskell that did Wives and Daughters? Yeah, that was a so in 19th century England. And she ends up falling in love with someone that basically
Takes
travels
her around the world
and goes into archaeology and things like that and biology and whatnot. But all right, so there you go, ladies. There you go. If you're looking, we got two guys here. One's looking for more of your homestead trad wife. The other wants someone that's going to travel Europe with him. I'm sorry, that probably briefed better.
Probably. I'm totally down to travel as well. I've been a lot of places, happy to travel.
Stop trying to steal Christian's girl. All right. Next question. This one's for me. What was your hardest experience in the military?
Can I add another question to this?
Gosh, dang, look.
Hey,
Mr. I haven't been on the show for 3 weeks. Sure comes back with a lot of.
He's excited
Yes.
to be back.
I'm excited to be back. This is a great conversation.
All right.
Nick, one of the things that you and I had talked about was that going into the military was an opportunity for you to prove to yourself what you were capable of. And I find that to be really interesting because it's applicable to many men, you know, even to myself when it comes to entrepreneurship, building a business, proving to myself that I am capable of doing what I believe I can do.
Yeah.
How did that factor into the hardest thing you ever did in the military?
So the wanting to constantly test yourself, you know, it meant I didn't just go into the military. I went into the infantry, and then I went airborne, and then I went to Ranger school, and I went to sniper school, and I went to, you know, and then when the war broke out, it was I need to get to war as quickly as possible. Who's going first? Special forces. Okay, I'm gonna go special forces. I can tell you right now, though, 2 combat tours, I don't know how many different raids we went on and things like that. I still don't feel like I approved myself. I still don't feel like I was really tested the way I wanted to be. In part because when you were overseas, there was some people that they were just in firefights all the time. There are other people that barely ever happen. There's some people that never happen. And it didn't mean you weren't going out and looking for a fight. You were. But especially when I was over there in 06 and 08, we had a lot of guys that realized that, it's a really bad idea? Getting in a firefight with Americans. Turns out we're really good at it.
Yeah.
And so I still look at it, and yeah, there were dangerous situations and there were successful missions and things like that. But I still look at it, I'm like, man, I still don't have the stories that I wanted. And I have a feeling that even if I got close to something I wanted, I'd still be comparing it with something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was it was actually difficult to leave the military feeling like I still had unfinished business. That was difficult. The hardest thing I ever did, like physically in the military, though, that's I think it was probably Ranger School. Special Forces qualification course was difficult, and it was certainly like a longer course, but it was broken up more. And at that point I was a staff sergeant. I was Ranger qualified. Like I knew a lot more going into it.
Yeah.
When I went to Ranger School, I was 20. I was a private, and I was just, and the physical stuff that they do where you were just exhausted. Like I have never been that tired before or since. I've never been that tired.
He was so skinny. I came to his graduation and he weighed probably less than me at the time, and I was skinny at the time.
I went into Ranger School probably weighing about 155, and I probably left weighing about 128.
Wow.
130. So in 70 days, that's a lot of weight.
Even David Goggins talked about going through Ranger School, having already passed BUDS.
Yeah.
And he failed twice because of an injury. But
yeah. No, well, so BUDS is like, I think BUDS is a week, right?
Okay.
Ranger School's 70 days.
Wow.
Now, it's not all in the field and all excruciating, but when you're going out and you're doing constant patrolling and you're just exhausted all the time, everyone's got their Ranger School story of, you're in a line at night and you're walking through the woods, and then you take a knee, and then you sit there and you're hallucinating talking to a bush, right? Or a tree, because you're just that tired, right? I watched one guy, we're in mountain phase of Ranger School, and mountain phase they're a little bit more careful because you could fall off something, right? And he kept calling it Ranger so-and-so. It was always it was never your rank when you were in Ranger School. In Ranger School, you're just Ranger. So Ranger Freitas, Ranger. This guy was like Ranger Simmons, and all you heard was cha-ching, cha-ching. Yes, Sergeant so-and-so. He goes, I'm not Sergeant so-and-so. Yes, Sergeant so-and-so. I am not Sergeant so. And then he looks at me and goes, where's your weapon? And he grabs his tie down, because we had to have all of our stuff tied down, right? So his weapon was tied. He grabs his weapon, or the tie down for his weapon, and he pulls his M4 over and hands it to him. He had run across the entire fire base, dragging his weapon behind him because he was just so out of it. And that sounds crazy, but like you got that tired.
Yeah.
And so from like the hardest thing, like physically, again, my age, my inexperience, and all that was probably one of the toughest. But
that's interesting because I think most people look at your experience and think the hardest thing you ever went through is probably going to be combat related.
They would, and for some guys, they would probably say that. But again, I never want to give people the wrong impression. Like I went over there, I did my tours, I did my job. We got a lot of bad guys, but I didn't spend the vast majority of my time over there feeling like I was in imminent danger.
Yeah.
There was a couple of times where I felt like, okay, I might die here, right? Or there's a couple of times where it was like, well, that mortar was close, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't like this idea of like, World War I, where you're in trench warfare and bombs are coming in.
It's just a different kind of warfare.
It's just a different kind of warfare, and again, that's why I never want to give people the impression that oh, Nick, Johnny Rambo, like
right,
no.
Right.
I think I did my job. I think I did it well. The best compliment anybody could ever give me for my service is if they asked the guys that I served with in combat, and if they all said, hey, if you had to go back, would you want Nick with you? And if they said yes, that's the best compliment I can get. That's it.
Well, you talked about having to leave the military, not feeling like you achieved what you wanted to. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's applicable for a lot of situations. I mean, even in what we do, like you've seen so much success on social, and when you're starting at 0 and think about 1 million, you think that million is going to be like a peak of a mountain, and you're going to stand there and feel like you've made it.
Yeah.
But no, it's just another day and another day to keep going.
Here's the other thing that I learned in the military, and it's served me well since I've been out as well. there was this for a while there was this time where I had in my mind, like, well, once I get this, then I will feel like I have done something.
Yeah.
Like once I have my Ranger tab, once I have my Special Forces tab, once I have my Green Beret, right? Once I go to combat, right?
Yeah.
And here's what you end up learning. No, there's always something else. There's always so, and then the other thing too is you do not rest on your laurels.
What do you mean by that?
Getting your Ranger tab is great, but if you can't go back and actually run a patrol, who cares?
Yeah.
What good is it? Like, yeah, you're going to be able to fool people. It's like I have a college degree. Can you do anything? Right? It's the same thing with Ranger School, same thing with SF. Oh, you got an SF tab. Cool. Do you know how to lead in indigenous, military or indigenous units? Do you understand counterinsurgency? Do you understand unconventional warfare? Do you understand special reconnaissance? Do you understand counterterrorism? Can you actually conduct it? How are you in a shoot house? Can people depend on you? Like, are you good at land nav? So one of the things that it taught me to appreciate more, especially since I've got out and people are like, oh gosh, you were a Green Beret. I'm like, yeah, I was. Right. But if you're not keeping up on your skills, if you're not keeping up on your capabilities, that's all once was stuff.
Yeah.
And once was stuff is not bad, right? There's going to be a time when I'm 80 and I'm not able to do the things that I can do when I'm 44 or whatever else. And it's fine to be able to look back and say, yeah, I know with the time that I had, I used it wisely, but it really taught me.
Well, that's one of your motivators for getting to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. It's one of your motivators for getting into MMA, back into jiu-jitsu and things like that.
How do I remain competent and capable?
To summarize, I have done a lot of imagining of what the destination would look like, through my whole life. And I've gotten to that destination and it's not nearly as nice as I thought it would be. And it's like there have been letdown after letdown after letdown. And I think that like it's really important that we don't see the destination as the goal.
Yeah.
But who do we become on the way there?
Yeah.
And how does that set us up for the next step?
Yeah.
That's true. I was talking to Nick recently about the fact that like when I knew him in high school, he would have looked at where he is now and completely idolized it. He would have been like, wow, like look at all the qualifications this guy has. He's been to combat, he did all this. Look how like buff he is. He would have,
Being generous.
you would have been so excited to meet you as teenage you.
That's nice.
But the thing is everything Nick has ever done, his response is this: well, it couldn't be that hard. I made it. I made it, so it couldn't be that hard. So, and so what he does is he ends up minimizing it, but then it's like, yeah, but there's a lot of people that are looking forward to this that are thinking this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And they're trying to strive for it. And you're sitting here being like, it's not that hard. Well, what about the guys that fail out of it?
Yeah.
And you're now telling them they're lame.
Well, some of them are, but not all. No, I mean, some of it is just anyway. So that's probably my hardest single experience in the military. The hardest thing overall was being away from family when you're gone. It is super tough to be watching your kids grow up through pictures, especially with Allie, little Allie, man. I missed all of her first Christmas, first Thanksgiving, first birthday, first Thanksgiving. I missed all of that. And that was really tough. And the reason why I came home and I still had such a good relationship with my kids was largely because of Tina. All right. Next one is for me and Tina. Do you let your kids date? No.
Can I jump in right here?
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with one of my good friends a couple of weeks ago, and we were having this conversation about letting kids date. Obviously, I don't have kids yet, so we're a good ways away from that.
Yeah.
And I said, my position right now is that they will not be able to date until they're 18. And he's like, well, I think this, and this. And I'm like, here's the difference. Every situation that you were pointing out where a parent has not allowed their kid to date until they're 18 and it has turned out badly. Mm-hmm. In most all of those situations, the parents did not do a good job of helping them look forward to what they could have.
That is 100% true.
And I used you both as an example in that situation. Like Nick and Tina have been intentional from day one of displaying, the love that they have for each other, the passion that they have for each other, the good things that come within marriage. And then their kids didn't have to wonder if what they could have right now would be worthwhile versus what they could have for the rest of their life. And so for me, my intent with my future wife will be, okay, how do we be intentional about displaying the love that we have for each other, the joy that comes out of this marriage, so that our kids can see what they can have later on in life. And I think that is the difference of when a parent does not allow their kids to date and it turns out badly versus when they don't allow them to date and it turns out really well.
It's for us, the word date means boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
And so it's like there is a point where I don't want my kids to have ownership over anybody else or have anybody else have ownership over them in their teen years, because dating in junior high and high school is just practice for divorce. It teaches you to cast people aside when you're bored with them and when you see something new coming along. And no matter what. So our reasons for not letting them date really didn't have anything to do with, we want to be like, stick to this like status quo, whatever we set for ourselves. What it really was is care for their emotional state and for their well-being. I don't care how amicable a breakup is, it always hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts to know that you are no longer the one who's preferred. Learning that you're not, like, somebody used to prefer you and now they don't, even if you didn't love them, that hurts and it stings. And I don't feel like anyone needs to go through that when they're young. You can be friends with everybody. We told the girls and Luke, like, you can be friends with people. You can even prefer people. You can like people. You can enjoy their conversation, talk with them, all that. You cannot own each other. This is not my girlfriend. This is not my boyfriend. The ownership side of it, that you need to reserve for when you're looking for your spouse.
Can I also say that part of what this is about, so to your point, it's not like we told our kids you're not allowed to date. What we said was, what we taught them is, what is the purpose of forming a relationship with another person? Well, the purpose is to find someone you're going to marry. Because if that's not the purpose, then what you're essentially saying is, I would like to use you for a certain period of time for my own gratification.
Recreation. It's not
for my own gratification, emotional, physical, otherwise.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to cast you aside. That's the practical reality of what it is. And you know this because that's why hookup culture is the way it is. Now they just took away any pretense that this is about marriage. And so what we told our kids was, okay, so if you can understand, I said, first of all, do you want to have a marriage like mommy and daddy have? Yes, great. Because I want you guys to have that too. Like, I'm not the dad that's going to tell you, oh, you're not allowed to date ever. No, I want you to have that relationship. And that's very important for dads to remember. Don't make this something where it's okay for your son, but not okay for your daughters.
Yeah.
Have an equal standard for both your sons and your daughters. Assure your daughters that you do want her to get married and that you want to be a part of that process of helping her discern between a good guy and a bad guy. Like, I never had a problem with my oldest daughter coming and talk to me. Like, she dated one other guy before Nick, who she's marrying, right? I know, right?
And the other guy's name was Nick too.
It's just kind of crazy. But anyways,
He's Nick number 3.
Yeah, she dated one other guy, and he was a very nice man, or a very nice young man, a gentleman. It just didn't work out, and that was fine. But they were very respectful of one another on boundaries and everything else.
Yeah, the reason we didn't mind that one is because he went to a boarding school and they could never be around each other, so that was fine.
Well, but that was also the only reason, and I relented a little bit, right? Because the rule was always 18, and she was like
3 months
17
away.
and a half, right? And we said, okay, this is fine, but here's the ground rules. Here's the other thing I will tell you. You know how much pushback I've gotten from, I have a 21-year-old daughter, an 18-year-old son, and a 16-year-old daughter. You know how much pushback I've gotten from them and not be allowed to date?
None.
0. None. And the reason why, is because the first thing that was set up is, we want you to get married. We want you to find that person that God has for you. We want you to have a wonderful marriage, kids, the whole thing. We want all of that for you. Okay? Dating is the process of finding that person. It's not the process of using someone. If you're not in a phase of your life where you can actually seriously consider getting married, why are you dating?
Yeah.
And instead, what you're doing is you have a different phase of your life. This phase of your life is largely focused on your education. It's largely focused on figuring out what you want to do. It's largely focused on figuring out what are your likes and interests and passions. If you start taking another phase, what it should be reserved for another phase of your life, and sticking it into this one, you're not only screwing up this phase, you're probably doing things that are going to screw up the other phase.
And I agree with that, not just for kids that are underage. Anybody, anyone, no matter the age, you could have had a marriage and be on the other side of a marriage because you're a widow now, or whatever the reasoning is.
Yeah.
if you're dating somebody and marriage is like a complete no, you're never going to marry again, why would you date?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? You're wasting their time. You're wasting your time. You're just going to hurt each other.
Yeah.
Two things that I think need to be taken into consideration. One, your kids not being in public school or private school probably reduce the pressure on them from their peers
enormously
to date. Because when you're in a group of, 100 people your age and everybody's dating and there's all these rumors about what's going on here and there, you feel led to pressured to also participate in that. But secondly, one thing that I've really respected from you both is, Lily's 21, but she's ready to be married.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, she is mature. She has her head on straight. Like, she didn't date growing up, but when the time came, she was ready and prepared.
Oh yeah.
Like,
she was even financially ready.
absolutely.
I mean, she saved up their down payment for their house.
yeah.
I was pretty impressed with her, and I don't say I'm so proud of her because it had nothing to do with me. She did this stuff on her own. Like she knew what she wanted to do.
The quality that must be practiced is delayed gratification.
Yes.
Right.
Like
Yes.
that is something that I will focus very heavily on in the early years of my kids is how do I instill that?
Yeah.
So one of the ways I tried to do it, and I don't know, maybe we'll have Lily on some time and see if it resonated with her. One of the things that I think we tried to do is I remember telling Lily the first time a little boy liked her. It was like 5th grade. And I said, well, she didn't want to tell me at first. And to Tina's credit, she was telling mommy, right? And she goes, you need to tell daddy. I don't want to tell daddy. Daddy's going to get mad. She said, no, daddy's not going to get mad. You need to tell daddy. I said, what's going on? She goes, this little boy at school likes me. Or she didn't say little boy. She says, boy at school likes me. Okay. Do you like him? It's okay, sweetheart. If you like him, you can tell me. Yeah, I kind of like him. I said, sweetheart, look, the fact that this little boy likes you already tells me that he has good judgment, right? Who wouldn't love you, right? Who wouldn't like you? You're wonderful, right? So that doesn't bother me. And the fact that you like him, I understand that like the butterflies you feel and all that, it's a wonderful feeling. I said, what did you tell him? And she said, well, I told him I can't date. And what did he say? He said he'd wait. I said, that's a very gentlemanly response. Very gentleman.
For a 5th grader.
For a 5th grader, right? And
I think
said,
he was dating somebody else like next week, but still.
But still, it's a gentlemanly response at the time. So I asked her, I said, well, do you know why you can't date? She goes, yeah, because dating's for marriage and we're obviously not in an age where we get married. So that's right, sweetheart. I said, let me explain something. I said, one day, I want you to have what mommy and I have. And one day that guy's going to be there. And one day I'm going to say, sweetheart, he's the one. He's the one. And I want, and you are going to be so in love. I can't even explain it to you. You are going to be so in love when you find the one that God has intended for you. It is going to be, it is impossible at this age right now to even imagine how wonderful that's going to feel. And you're just going to look at him as like, my gosh, this guy is just so great. I can't wait to get married. I can't wait to have a family. I can't wait to do all of that. How much do you want to have to explain to him about what happened before? How much of that do you want to have to explain? I said, or do you want to be able to go into that saying, these things I saved for you? And a lot of people look at that now and they think it's entirely unrealistic. And it is if you put your kids in a situation where you don't give them something bigger to dream for. And so this is one area where I am adamant about, no, your kids are far more stronger and resilient to what's going on with the culture if you, first of all, do your job as a parent to protect them as much as possible, but then also give them the dream of something that's real. And then here's probably one of the most important parts. You better reflect it in your own marriage. It is of no use to tell your child how wonderful marriage is if all they see within your marriage is strife and anger and frustration and disappointment, right? So, but if you're reflecting that and they can look at it and they say, no, I believe this is possible because I see it in my own parents. You will be shocked at the temptations they will be able to avoid, the boundaries they will set for themselves, the standards that they will hold up to because they know it's worth it. And I'm telling you right now, it's a wonderful thing.
Can I fix something real quick? Because earlier I said I don't like to say that I'm proud of Lily for the way she did things. and I should caveat that because I am very proud of her, but I don't like to use the word proud because it implies I had something to do with it. I like to say I'm impressed by her. I admire what she's done, because that I feel like she deserves that, and
credit,
I didn't make it happen. So.
All right, number 7. This one's for the crew. We're going to go through some of these a little bit faster to catch up so we can get to all the questions. All right. Why did you stop doing live episodes, and will you ever go back to them? Do we want to reveal?
At the end of the day, it was a huge time constraint on the team. Like, it was a lot having to be ready at a certain time, and it really did not offer us a lot of flexibility and other content we wanted to create as well. And so we had to go to pre-recorded when you went into session in January, and we just kept doing it after because we were able to schedule things better, be more flexible. I do think we will do more live content in the future, probably within our community.
Yeah, I would say right now, if we stopped doing live because of the time constraints. Well, when you have to be somewhere every Tuesday, every Thursday at a certain time, especially with our schedules, it's not very conducive. It's difficult
and
to pull
when you
off.
had something with family that you needed to be at, having to adjust that time, it was a lot.
Well, and we got to a point where we were either going to have to continually tell people, oh, we're not going to be able to do it today, but we just said, hey, it's better to go pre-recorded. We've got like another major trip coming up here pretty soon that I'm excited about, that you guys are going to see a lot of content from. Pretty interesting trip. But again, it would have interfered with live. However, I will say this, for all of you that missed the live, you definitely want to join the online community, go over to Circle, because we are going to be rolling out some stuff here later this year that I'm personally really excited about. I think not only is it going to be going back to like providing live content, I think it's going to be a vast improvement over what we were doing before.
I wouldn't be against doing a live stream for election night this year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we will probably do
various
do
different things. But we've got the setup for it. I'll also say, just to be completely transparent with our viewers, that the videos performed better when we pre-recorded and uploaded them versus live streaming.
Yeah.
And that's also something we factored into.
I think it also has to do with the way that YouTube actually like shows it within the feed.
I do miss the questions on the fly, though. That was awfully
The
fun.
live interaction was incredible.
We missed the live interaction. We're going to go back to it. I'll tell you this. One of the other reasons why we want to do it within the online community as we go forward is because we also want a lot of that live experience with questions to be coming from the people that really want to be a part of the community. Yeah. And when you just do it on YouTube, you guys have all seen it, who were there for the live episodes. There'd always be 3 or 4 trolls that would come in and just kind of dominate the comments and take everything off. All right. Number 8, this one, we're the speed round. What is the greatest military threat to the United States? Christian, do you want to take the first crack?
Leftism in the United States.
Military
itself.
threat.
Yeah, exactly. I think we ourselves are our own biggest threat. China can't touch us. Russia can't touch us. Iran certainly can't touch us. North Korea can't touch us. I mean, theoretically they can, right? Russia could nuke the White House, but I mean, we're talking about the end of the world, right?
So we're not talking about like
So I
plausible
think
threat.
I think the greatest military threat is inside our own country.
If I had to, so I'm not gonna piggyback on that. I'm gonna say, like, if we're talking about a state actor, and a military focused threat, I honestly think it would probably be something like EMP related, because I don't see, again, to Christian's point, China's not loading up a bunch of transport craft and landing in California, right? Russia's not dropping paratroopers into New York City. These things are not happening. They're logistically very, very difficult to pull off. But if I wanted to cripple the United States for a significant period of time while I was doing other things in the world, like maybe invading Taiwan or something like that, and I wanted to find a way to strike the United States, it would probably be with computer viruses, EMP, cyber warfare. And that's something where I think that they could do credible damage, especially if it was done in such a way to where you could get Americans fighting against Americans while you had to pull it off. So that's my take. Anybody else got a...
Nope, that's good.
I was going to go along with, I originally was going to say Congress. So
it's a military threat, like
I
specifically
understand,
military threat.
But Congress has a tendency of throwing human life at things without even putting their vote behind it. You know, they want to let
Don Lemon would say right-wing activist.
Oh yeah, it's white supremacy. All right. All right. Question number 9. If you were stranded on a desert island, what famous person would you bring with you, platonic only?
Gotta repopulate.
Yeah.
Okay, for Tina and I can be platonic. You guys can bring whatever.
Oh man,
famous.
because I was gonna say
Wait,
you.
what do you mean? Oh man,
Yeah, I was gonna say you.
it's gotta be a famous person.
Yeah, you're kind of famous.
Well, that's
Okay.
too easy.
Yeah,
It
that's
was so
too
funny.
easy.
We were at Costco a while back, and
This was a funny story.
Nick was going over and grabbing us a pizza to bring home for the kids, and I was waiting for him by the cart, and this lady came up and said, "Is that guy on YouTube? I noticed you guys were together." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's my husband. That's Nick." And she goes, "I thought that was him. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry to bother you." Well, then her kids came up to me after she walked over, I think, to do something, and her kids came over. They were little, like 7, 8
Yeah.
years old, and one of them said, "Excuse me, ma'am, are you famous?"
She was a little
And-
sweetie too.
It was so cute. And I said, "Oh, I'm not famous." I said, "My husband might be a little famous."
All right,
That's
who
cool.
are you taking, Hamilton?
I
Famous person.
honestly don't know.
Platonic. You can't take. He's
That's
like,
not fair. You got to repopulate the earth.
I don't know.
Yeah, and Brett Cooper's already married, so
You did not have to say that. You did not have to say that. Go ahead, Christian.
Does it have to be like current or historical?
historic. You can have historic.
Oh.
Okay, so practically, I mean, it would probably have to be somebody like David Livingston.
Okay.
You know,
presume?
yeah, exactly. I would presume it would have to be David Livingston because I couldn't keep myself alive on a desert island, but he might be able to.
Yeah.
Um,
I love it how the guys immediately like. Usually when people get asked this question, it's like an icebreaker question of like, who do you think would be fun to have a conversation with? Like Hamilton immediately goes into, well, we got to repopulate, and Christian immediately goes into,
Someone's gotta
how
keep
am I
me alive.
surviving in this
Right.
environment?
like, I mean, okay, if survival's not like a
Yeah.
challenge, if it's just filled with a bunch of food and
Yeah.
internet access or whatever, then like, I don't know. I mean, interesting people. There's all sorts of interesting people. I mean, I honestly probably would take Nick with this.
That's kind of that's part of the problem. If we're going for survival here, Nick's a pretty good option.
All righty, and T and I are taking each other because we're cheating on this question. All right, number 10. Could China take Taiwan without a war?
30 seconds.
Well, they were trying to do that for decades. They were trying to foster better connections with the island, particularly, you know, what's ironic is the CCP had a better relationship with the KMT
Yeah, that's
than
weird.
the DPP.
And just so you know, the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, the KMT was the Kuomintang.
Kuomintang. I mean, we're
Kuomintang. That
probably
was Chiang
butchering it,
Kai-shek.
but
So basically,
the Chinese Nationalist Party.
the original war was between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao, right? The two parties, obviously those two guys are dead now, but KMT was Chiang Kai-shek and CCP was, Mao. So, but yeah, right now it's weird. It's actually the more left-wing party in Taiwan that just wants independence. It's the KMT that still holds on to this idea that one day we will be one China
so
again.
the KMT's logic is, yeah, sure, we could be friendly with them and trade and get rich,
Yeah.
and we'll just sit back and wait for the CCP to collapse eventually,
Yeah.
and then we'll come in and we'll liberate, China and restore the republic. Because the KMT has not given up the hope that one day Taiwan would unify China, not necessarily by force, but through like a
Yes.
Tiananmen Square that succeeds, that overthrows the CCP, and then the KMT
I would
can
say
come
this.
back.
I think it's more likely for Taiwan to take China without a war.
Well, that's exactly what the KMT's logic is. The DPP doesn't want that.
statement.
You know what that means? No, it's right what Christian said. It's think of an insurgency. And by that, I don't mean no war takes place. I mean, you don't have a formal war between the Republic of China, which is Taiwan, and the, PRC. Instead, you have a civil uprising within China that is more pro-market, pro-democratic. And then you essentially have a merging because now there's actually, you would probably have this phase where they're two separate entities, but then there's like maybe kind of like a loose confederation.
They move towards reunification,
Yeah.
similar to like East and West Germany or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And that's the whole the KMT's thought process is, well, we've lost the ability to retake it by military force like they tried to in the 50s and 60s where they were planning like a reinvasion
Yeah.
that never materialized. And so the KMT's thought process is we will just wait the CCP out because Marxism is unstable and eventually they think that they'll wreck the country.
I mean, if you look at it right now, China's going to lose probably 700 million people by the turn of the century. They're going to have they have a huge housing crisis. They have huge demographic crises. They have India and China are not buddies. I don't care what BRICS attempted to make of it. They're not buddies. And so China's not, the current CCP is not in a good position. They've been riding off of, a combination of sound policy, certain sound policies, but also the ability to inflate currency and do a lot of other things that the chickens are coming.
Well,
home
they're
to
also
roost for
reverting
China.
back to Marxism because they abandoned it in the 80s and 90s, and now they're reverting back to it. The last thing I will say on this point is that the CCP, who rules the People's Republic of China, they could have done this, but they have now guaranteed that this will never happen. And the reason why is because if they had respected the agreement that they made with the British over Hong Kong, and if they had respected free markets like they had started to in the 80s and 90s and not reverted back to heavy-handed Maoism and totalitarianism under Xi Jinping, if they had shown the world that one country, two systems is actually respected, and if they had fostered closer relations with Taiwan, they might have been able, if the KMT had taken over Taiwan politically, which they weren't able to, but if the KMT had retained their control over Taiwan and the CCP had demonstrated that they actually do follow a hands-off approach to places like Hong Kong, they might have been able to reintegrate Taiwan under a similar system. That will never happen.
No. All right, question number 11. I know you guys are pro-life, but what do you think about IVF, in vitro fertilization? Well, I'm glad we don't have a controversial one right here. I'll go first on this since I serve in the legislature and this is coming up. I used to be totally fine with IVF. No problems with it whatsoever. I have a really good friend that they have 3 daughters as a result of IVF. Here's what I would say. I have become more skeptical of it. So if you're telling me, do I think it should just be banned outright and never exist? I don't think I'm there right now, but I have a real problem. And I actually voted no on a bill that we had a while back because they were changing the language surrounding IVF, where basically you were treating these embryos like they were property. And there's a real problem. So look, wherever you stand on this issue, and I know people get very emotionally involved because they have friends that have experienced this or utilized this. And it's like, I would never look at my friend and his wife and their 3 daughters and be like, oh, this was no, I think it's wonderful. But we have to start asking ourselves the question about having all of these fertilized eggs, which that's conception has taken place right now.
There's a serious moral dilemma when multiple eggs are fertilized and then frozen for however long.
And then just kept.
And then oftentimes you have a situation where they reduce the number. Once you do have, they'll implant a few babies, embryos, and after a little bit, after you see whether or not they implanted and they're taking, they will reduce the number.
Yeah, I think there's some real danger.
And that's abortion.
I think there's some real danger in looking at this as like just another commodity to buy and sell.
And it's expensive.
It's gotten even worse now because it used to be that the classic case of IVF was husband and wife desperately wanted to have a child using IVF, usually with someone they whatever it was, in order to have that child. And I think most of us looked at it as like, oh yeah, totally understandable. That is not what it is becoming now. Now we're looking at, especially with surrogacy too, where it's like, I think it's funny that the left talks about Handmaid's Tales. It's like, you guys are the ones trying to create a marketplace for renting women's wombs or having brokers making a profit off of renting women's wombs out. And then and I get it. It's not a 1-for-1 comparison to Handmaid's Tale, but it's sure a hell of a lot closer than anything they can accuse. It's a lot closer to that than Butker's speech, right? And then the other thing too is that you're starting to see people that I think have some very, very perverse incentives and very, very perverse sexual perversions using IVF because, oh, I'm a trans man. I just really want to breastfeed a child.
Yeah.
No, you're a pervert. You're a pervert. This is probably going to be a demonetized episode because I said that. Fine. I accept your terms. If you're doing something like this, and it's like, it's not like we don't have evidence. We have evidence of people that have these kinds of fetishes, and then you see them breastfeeding a child.
They post all over social media about having.
I'm sure that's just because they want that connection with that child. You cannot replicate that. And so again, I know it's not a 1-for-1, thing with IVF, but I'm just saying, like, I certainly understand the desire for a husband and wife who can't have children for whatever reason through natural means to want to be able to do this. I get it. But I think we need to be really, really careful about treating, embryos like commodities and property. And I think we need to be really, really careful about some of the people that I believe are now using this as a way to satisfy some sort of perversion that they have. So again, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Right. I mean, I think there is an ethical way to treat it, but the problem with the ethical way is that you don't have the abundance of, if you're going to do it ethically, you're not going to freeze a ton of extra embryos, and the embryos that you implant, you're not going to reduce the number on. And so there's a lot to do it ethically. I think it becomes much harder. And that's one of the reasons why people, a lot more expensive and a lot harder, but ethically it's better. And so
I will never support any policy that ends up treating those embryos as if they're nothing more than property or a commodity to be sold or traded.
Yeah. If anybody in our community has information on why IVF is so expensive, you should drop it in the channel in our community, because I'd like to read about that.
Yeah. So that's again, I know that's kind of a hard take, and I'm trying to be very considerate of the people that have like benefited from this, and in the way that I think all of us would say, yes, that totally makes sense. But I think we also need to recognize that what's going on here, there's a dark side to it. And if we're not willing to address the ethical issues surrounding that, then we're going to end up with something. We're going to end up something going into the world of not just the stuff that we're currently seeing, but eugenics and everything else. Because the moment you treat it like a commodity, it's like, well, why can't I select for these attributes or traits? Why can't I select for this?
Well, at that point, it becomes just like dog breeding. Yeah. And you're like, oh, well, this one's, AKC dog, and it has this kind of conformation and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you'll end up with a marketplace like that. And it's really interesting because not all of, but some of the same people that say, adopt, don't shop, adopt. Yeah. They want you to get a rescue dog, not go to a breeder. Those are the same ones that think it's no big deal to like rent out somebody's womb.
We are already
True.
The same people who tell me that nobody wants to do that. You're the same people that tell me it's just a clump of cells. Yeah. So you clearly won't see it. You won't see a problem with it being traded as a commodity. So the moment anybody on that side tells me nobody wants to, I'm like, yep, nobody wants to, or that's not happening, which turns into, why do you care if it's happening? Which turns into, you're a
bigot if you
that
think
thing that's happening is actually a good thing, which turns into you're a bigot if you don't celebrate it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that same side of the aisle that is all into this kind of thing has always had a bit of a sticking issue with the whole owning people thing. So, not surprising.
Alrighty. Number 12. Other than Christ, okay, they know us, who has been the most influential person on your political worldview?
There's been quite a few.
You get one.
I get one. I could say Thomas Sowell, but everybody else is going to say Thomas Sowell.
I was going to say Thomas Sowell.
And that's only been for a period of my life.
But it started somewhere, and it didn't start with Thomas Sowell.
Who did it start with?
My grandfather.
Okay. Not family.
Not family.
Wait, you can't. No, those parameters did not exist.
I want to give a list here. It'll be a quick list.
You get 3.
Grandfather, Mark Levin, the radio host Rush Limbaugh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rand Paul.
I said 3.
And then Thomas Sowell.
Now you're at 5. All right, Christian, name one. See if you can do it in one. One guy that's been the most influential in your political worldview.
It's evolved over time because my views have changed.
This is a bad question.
You're a bad question.
I mean, Nick has known me since I was in high school. I used to be Mr. Libertarian. I was obsessed with, so I would have said Ron Paul 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Nowadays, this is controversial.
Oh, no.
I'd say Plato.
Oh gosh. Ugh.
Future debate on a podcast. Future debate. That would be really interesting.
I will say that, I hate that you changed all the parameters when Hamilton was answering, because my answer was going to be my dad.
Yeah.
My stepdad, Kurt. And the reason why is because I grew up in the carpet cleaning van, because he owned a carpet cleaning business, and I would help him by adjusting the hoses and all of that while he was
ride
carpet
around
cleaning.
with Rush Limbaugh on the radio.
Yep. But my dad would always bring up really interesting questions, and then we would just go back and forth and back and forth.
That's cool.
And, I started doing that when I was really little.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, Rush Limbaugh, we listened to all day in the carpet cleaning van. And I remember going to my friend's house whose mom had a girlfriend and lived there. So her mom and her mom's girlfriend And I didn't really realize that was the dynamic at the time. I thought they were just roommates, but they did sleep in the same room. But so I remember going over there. I could not have been more than 7 or 8 years old. And I'm like, I think we can all agree that someday we'll look back and recognize Ronald Reagan as the best president of our time. And they looked like she just about spit out whatever she was drinking, the girlfriend. And she was like, I think we can agree to disagree. And then she came up with, not very long after that, she made me and my friend go out and pull weeds in the front yard.
I thought they didn't like child labor.
I need to add one more interesting.
Okay.
So I said Plato, and he was like, ah.
Ugh.
He's going to say again, but then when he understands why, he's going to be like, oh, I agree. The other person, Antonio Gramsci.
Okay, because for the opposite of reason, what of Antonio?
In order to understand why we are currently living in the world that we're in.
Yeah.
You need to read him.
So I agree with all that. I would say that the most influential for me is going to be Thomas Sowell. And again, I started off, Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh was incredibly influential because he was one of the only voices out there in kind of a popular media platform that was actually saying anything that went against the popular narrative at the time. And I think he deserves a lot of respect for that. But as I look at the way I think about issues, the way I think about economics, the way I think about policy, the way I try to analyze things and look for root causes, or go past some sort of like bare assumption into, okay, well, what does that really mean? It's Thomas Sowell. I have spent more time listening to and reading Thomas Sowell than probably certainly any contemporary thinker. And Bastiat and Hayek and Friedman and big fans. But Thomas Sowell has been one of the most prolific authors, and I think he has done the best job of explaining a whole host of fairly complex concepts and ideas in a way that is very, very accessible for the layman. And so for me, Thomas Sowell is going to be the
last comment on that. It's interesting how, though, when I was in that period of time listening to Rush Limbaugh on a regular basis, I was very much so a Republican. Mm-hmm. But through the period of my life where I've, listened to Thomas Sowell, read his books, Rand Paul, more liberty-minded philosophy, I don't hold the title of Republican myself. I'm like a liberty conservative, and my identity is not as much with the Republican Party at all, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this one book is, this next question is kind of in line with the last one, is if you had to pick one book other than the Bible to recommend to someone who wants to have a better understanding of politics, one book. Does everyone understand the assignment?
Yes.
One book.
This is easier.
Not like 15. Okay. One book. What would it be? I'm going first because I'm going to steal the one that I think Christian's going to use. It would be The Law by Frederick Bastiat.
He stole mine, so I'm gonna have to give a different one then.
Yeah. Christian's license plate, so you all know, is Bastiat.
Yeah.
Thanks for doxing me, Tina.
Yeah, so if you see it, you can key his car.
Liberty and Tyranny by Mark Levin. It was a good book.
Read that one.
It's a good book. Was a good book for my 8th grade mind at the time because my teacher told me I needed to be better well read if I was going to make arguments.
Yeah.
And so that's the one she
recommended. That was the one that he also called the Conservative Manifesto, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, he stole mine. I was going to say The Law. I will definitely still highly recommend The Law.
Yeah.
The Law, at least in terms of economics and politics, is one of the best books ever written. Another one that because I don't want to just reiterate what you actually you were about to say something. What were you going to say?
No, the good thing about The Law, and the reason why I always recommend, like, to give you an idea, I buy hundreds of copies of The Law because you can get them for like $1.
Nice.
Right. I will buy them for like $1, the paperback version. I will hand it out at my office. I'll hand it out when I talk to students because it's like 75 pages. And the reason why I like it so much is I think he does the best kind of comprehensive look at foundational political. Why does the law exist? Right. Why does the law exist?
And how does it become perverted?
And how does it become perverted? And what are the incentive structures? And I feel like once you understand the law, once you understand what he's explaining in that book, when you start looking at every individual policy decision, it becomes a lot easier to categorize it as, is this achieving justice? Is it not? Why? What are the incentives? Instead of just looking at things like, well, that sounds nice, right? Like the law is, so that's why I like it. Go ahead.
I guess if I would have to give a second one, it's a little bit more controversial, but Democracy, the God That Failed by Hans Hermann Hoppe. the problem that we have increasingly is that there's so many people, I think, that don't realize that democracy is incredibly cringe. And this actually gets a little bit into the law, because Bastiat actually talks about this in the law, where he talks about how you have all of these people that somehow think that the government needs to just spring forth all of these, benefits as if they're not taking it from the people.
Yeah.
And politicians pride themselves on going to the electorate and being like, look at all the things I gave you, not, leaving out conveniently that I took it from you and now I'm giving it back to you with strings attached. And by the way, I'm keeping some for myself. And especially because in the United States, our founding as a country has led to this mythos that, well, we fought against tyranny, monarchism is bad, and we created this republic, but then it became a democracy over time, and it became increasingly a majoritarian system with things like the 17th Amendment, for example. And then we also massively expanded the franchise, not just in ways that you could argue are good, but I mean in ways that are destructive, where you're now allowing people to basically vote themselves the public treasury. They're pillaging the treasury, and they're electing politicians that brag about it.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we've now conflated that democracy is synonymous with freedom. But as Peter Thiel once said many years ago, I think 15 years ago, that democracy and freedom are not actually synonymous. In many ways, they're actually at odds with each other, because if you've simply created a political structure where you're just electing the best guy to pillage the treasury and enrich yourself, that's not freedom. You're just selecting the biggest con artist out there that, has the, the most slick message he's robbing you, basically.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get across to people that it is not freedom to simply have the privilege to elect your master who's going to end up pillaging you. That's not what freedom is.
All right. Favorite book? One book.
I mean, it's a hard question for me because I don't totally love reading just political books.
Yeah.
But I would probably have to say The Road to Serfdom, F.A. Hayek, I think. Yeah.
Nice.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that is. All right, because that does a good job of explaining why we're in the mess we're in. All right, number 14. Okay, so we got to go. We got to go quicker. You guys are talking way too much. Anyway, what sort of gun would you recommend for home defense? I'm not an expert. Well, first of all, if you're talking about a home defense weapon, there's two sort of rounds you can go with this. One is the classic shotgun, right? The other is what I would argue you should get a semi-automatic pistol. So if you're not an expert, first of all, get some time at the range. Yeah. Go with somebody that knows how to handle a firearm and knows how to handle a firearm tactically, not just target shooting.
Pay
right?
for training.
Yeah, if you need it. It's always good. Look, I'm a big fan of people owning firearms. I'm a big fan of them having for home defense. But you should know how to responsibly handle your firearm, because a home defense weapon is one that the magazine is in and is sitting on your bedstand, not locked up in a safe somewhere.
Just get yourself a shotgun.
Yeah, so shotgun works. Semi-automatic pistol. I would argue against a revolver if you have small children in the house, and here's why. First of all, I exposed my children to firearms at a fairly young age because I wanted them to know how to handle them responsibly, and I wanted them to know that they were dangerous, right? They were a useful tool, but also dangerous. So I never had an issue with any of my kids handling firearms or whatnot. But, if you have other kids coming over or whatever it is, the reason why I advise against a revolver is not only because it has lower round capacity, but also because typically if you have a small child that gets a hold of a firearm, they put their thumb in the trigger well. And if it's a revolver and it doesn't have sufficient safeties, that's where a lot of your accidents take place.
Because the only finger strong enough to pull the trigger is their thumb.
Right, for a toddler or whatnot. Now, if you get a semi-automatic pistol and you're a little bit worried about that, right, one of the things you can do is I usually recommend a 9mm because it's a good solid round. It's easy to find. You can find the sort of rounds that are better for home defense and things like that. Ones that will expand on impact, not go through as many walls, all that good stuff. The other thing, too, is that that's the one that you can leave on your bedstand with the magazine loaded, right? And in the magazine well, but not one in the chamber. So if you're worried about it, what that means, and the reason why I tell people to do this who are not as comfortable with firearms and are getting used to it, is because what that means is in the middle of the night, you can pick up that pistol and you can rack around. And it might be just the racking of the round is sufficient to let somebody know that they should probably rob elsewhere, right? But the other thing that happens is that if for some reason a child got into your bedroom or whatnot and picked that thing up, they're not going to be able to rack around. And so there's nothing that they're going to be able to do that they can really hurt themselves with a semi-automatic pistol like that, provided you don't have a round in the chamber. So I personally like Springfield XD. I think that there's a lot of other good pistols out there. You know, Smith & Wesson, Glock, the whole deal.
Well, that thing's so hard to rack around in that I can barely rack around in that thing.
I can't believe you said Glock.
Well, I figured there might be some, namby-pamby wuss girls that might want to go. I'm a Colt 1911 fan, but a Springfield XD I think is a really good semi-automatic pistol for the money, right? You can get
Just remember, if your plan is to rack it in the middle of the night, you have to practice actually doing it.
And don't have your finger in the trigger well when you rack it. And the other thing too, I always tell women this because a lot of times they'll say, I can't pull it back. Hold it with you. If you're right-handed, right, you're going to grab it by the pistol grip. You're going to hold it and you're going to push, right? So you're going to push the pistol grip. You're not going to try to pull the slide. And sometimes that makes it easier to be able to rack around.
I still found it really hard with the XD. I did fine with like the 9mm XD, but the 45, I really struggle to rack that thing.
Yeah, 45's man good. That's all right.
Yeah.
That's easy. All right, so that's what I would recommend. But again, always go out there, get the training, be comfortable with it because that's what you really want. Okay, let's go to this next one here. Crew, what other podcasts do you listen to? I'm a big fan of our friend Rudyard over at What If Alt Hist. I love watching his stuff. I think he does a really good job on his research. Interesting topics. Mantis Wave is another one. These I like.
They're all YouTube channels.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we don't really listen to audio podcasts that much unless we're traveling.
Yeah. I mean, I'll listen to like some Daily Wire stuff and stuff. But honestly, the ones I really like, What If Alt Hist, Mantis Wave, some of the history ones, History March. I used to really like Kings and Generals. Lately, I feel like there's some politics working its way into Kings and Generals that I am not happy with.
They must have some new script writers.
I used to love that. And they do a very quality product, but I'm listening to some of the narration and explanations now. I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
You used to love King of Kings podcast, but the guy has not put anything out in so long.
At some point, I'll have to rebrand it. Yeah. At some point, I'll have to rebrand it to just the Wars of the Diadochi because that was way too ambitious. It was a nice project to start with, though.
I also like Frank Turek. It's escaping me now what the name of it is. It's something Faith. Reasonable Faith by William Lane Craig is another one. But Frank Turek is one I really like. Hamilton.
I don't listen to many history or political podcasts. Most of all of my stuff is business related. I listen to the Iced Coffee Hour with Graham Stephan. They have a lot of good conversations. George Janko's show. He used to be a real lifestyle kind of guy with Logan Paul, but has recently made a lot of his podcasts about faith.
Yeah.
That's been pretty excellent. I've enjoyed watching him progress. Alex Ramosey's podcast is really good. And there was another podcast called Video Creators, which I learned a lot from regarding YouTube. And there's a faith one that I want to mention that I can't remember the name of, but I'm going to jump back in a little bit and mention that.
And man, there's actually a lot, although there's a mix between YouTube channels and podcasts.
Give me 3.
So I'm also a big fan of, I'll just reiterate that I'm a big fan of Mantis Wave and What If Alt Hist as well.
Yeah.
I like watching both of their channels. In terms of more standard podcasts, I'm a big fan of the History of Byzantium podcast by Robin Pearson, which is kind of the successor to the History of Rome podcast by Mike Duncan.
Yeah.
That one's still ongoing, the History of Byzantium. He's gotten to the Fourth Crusade now.
Yeah. History of Rome was an excellent podcast.
I'm a fan of the Unbelievable podcast, which is actually hosted in the UK, where they usually, not always, but they'll usually bring a Christian of some sort and an atheist or skeptic or agnostic of some sort on. Now, sometimes there's differences. Sometimes they'll branch into philosophy in general or more broad theology, but that's a great show. And I mean, the last one would probably be, I don't know. Like, I mean, a lot of the stuff that Nick mentioned, I'm a big fan of as well.
All right, let's go to Tina.
I'm not a huge podcast fan. Like I can catch a podcast here and there if I have the time, but I'm a quiet person. Like I like my house quiet. I don't want noise on. And I don't like to put headphones in and just listen to things. I need, like, I'm the type of person where my brain is loud, so I don't really like more noise. So I don't really, but once in a while I will catch like Tim Pool. Yeah. I'll catch, some, few others. If I'm actually watching something on YouTube or anything like that, it's almost always learning how to do something.
Yeah.
So it's always tutorials. that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, that's true. Like I also like Roots and Refuge. Roots and Refuge, Justin Rhodes on the homesteading side.
If you haven't already, Justin has a video of he and Nick walking around the farm on his channel, and we might have a video coming out soon too.
Yeah. Nerdrotic is another one I love to watch for like culture in Hollywood. And then Sean Ryan show.
Yeah,
Sean Ryan's got some
great.
interesting
Yeah, pretty much
guests.
every podcast, especially if it's a video podcast, everyone that I see is pretty much Nick turning it on. And so then I see it by default.
I watch a ton of YouTube.
Me
So
too.
I cut Nick's hair once a week. And that's when he always puts something on. And so I'll be cutting his hair and hearing what he has on, but that's it.
If YouTube is your primary form of entertainment, YouTube Premium is a step up.
Oh,
And
yeah.
this was not sponsored.
This
by
was not
YouTube.
sponsored, but the experience of not having to watch
Ads.
the ads makes it an entirely different experience and much better. Just think about it this way: you're saving time.
Yeah.
Oh, especially because we've gotten comments on our episodes, our videos, where people are like, "Why am I seeing Joe Biden ads in your video?"
I didn't do it. Yeah.
It's not us, it's
Yeah.
YouTube.
The other podcast I wanted to mention was Becoming Something. There's a great Christian podcast. Really love those conversations. And then if you're also into finance, I'm sure everybody my age who's into finance knows Caleb Hammer. His show is hilarious. He brings people in to look at their financials, their bank statements, and just rips them apart.
He's like the Zoomer millennial Dave Ramsey,
Yes.
but much more
Yes.
funny.
Okay. All right. So we got to go through these. We got to go faster. Right. What is the ideal family compound? Well, this is easy. You got to have at least 1,000 acres, 1,000 acres away from a major metropolitan city, but you still want road access. You need to have water on the property. Springs are nice, but I would also recommend at least something like, you might get away with a couple
River
creeks,
frontage.
but you want a river, right? You want a river, and you want a good combination of high ground and arable land. So like, for instance, I'm looking at 6,000 acres right now, which I cannot afford at all, but it has like high ground in the middle, high ground on the top, 2 valleys with arable land. And then the access to it is over a bridge with a major river of which you have 2
Yeah.
miles
So
of
if anybody
riverfront.
would like to sponsor that 6,000 acres,
I am like,
we can come up with some type of business proposition.
yeah, arable land, water away from major metropolitan areas. That's the ideal family compound.
next question.
All right, crew. What was one of the hardest moments in your life that turned
I
into...
didn't get to answer that question.
Sorry, we're moving on. Man.
Okay,
Should
go
have
ahead.
jumped in faster. Oh gosh, wait. What is one of the hard? Man, this is kind of a heavy. I'm going to save this one for later. All right, if we can get to this one, we will. But this is a tough one. All right, Tina. Next question, Tina. What was it like being married to a soldier?
I mean, I was never not married to a soldier, so
That's
to me,
true.
that's just what marriage was.
Yeah.
But it was really, really interesting in a lot of ways. There was a lot of distance. We spent the first 11 years of our marriage, about 5 years of that we spent apart due to various deployments and TDY trips and various training and everything else. We spent quite a bit of that time apart. So you have to kind of be a little bit self-sufficient, and you've got to be able to keep things running. And, you've got to be able to function independently if you need to. With the reason I would say that is because I knew women that couldn't seem to function without their man there, and they would seek other men, and that would be a problem. So, I think it takes a certain type of person. Like if you're going to marry a soldier, you better know you're up for it. And you can't be weak. You just can't. Because it's not easy. It's hard.
Christian, what is your favorite period of history to study?
I have 2. One is the 1,000-year period between Alexander's conquests and the Islamic conquests.
Okay.
So that's like classical antiquity.
Yeah. Greece, Rome.
And then leading into the Roman Persian wars and then finally the Islamic conquests. So like the last great war of antiquity with Heraclius. Oh man, what a Chad. Anyway, so that's the first period that I find really fascinating. Second one is the long 19th century. So from the French Revolution to World War I. So some 1789 all the way to 1914. Specifically the 19th century in general, especially from the perspective of Europe. That was actually the focus of my graduate dissertation was about the Austrian Navy. Believe it or not, they had a navy.
Yeah.
And it was mostly set during the 19th century. was the focus of that. So I find those two periods pretty fascinating. You know, one's 1,000-year period and one's about 100-year period. And I know they're separated by a lot, but those are the two eras that I personally find the most interest in.
Okay, that works. We'll accept that.
He's like so happy I got through that relatively quickly.
Okay. Let me see here. Nick, would you ever consider running for president?
No.
No.
Are you serious? That's been the plan this entire time.
No. And look, I've had people ask this before, and usually on social media. And look, it's always nice when people think you'd be a good chief executive, or it's a horrible insult that they're saying, like, have you ever considered being president? You look old and incapable. No, I wouldn't. I never say never on things where it's like, I would never do that because, but nowhere near my life plan anyways. All right, Tina, what is one piece of advice you would give on the proper care and feeding of your husband?
Okay. I mean, I think that some things are kind of a no-brainer. Like, you need to learn how to cook if you don't know how to cook.
Especially if you want to marry Christian.
I know this is kind of like taboo to say that women should cook, but like women should freaking cook. I'm sorry, but we should. And
I grew up with some of the most wonderful cooks in my family. And if that does not continue through my family, I'm going to be severely disappointed.
Yeah, I think it's really, here's why I'm saying this, is because your job as a wife, I think, along with making a peaceful environment of home for your family and your spouse and anyone who visits, is you need to be hospitable. And the first people to be hospitable to is your family, is your like start closest to you. And I think it's important. People are in better moods when they're well fed. I wasn't the best cook when we first got married, but I'm a fairly good cook now. And so I think that knowing how to make meals that are nutrient dense is very, very important. But the other thing too is I think a lot of times we think our men don't need to be complimented, and we think that words of affirmation aren't all that important, but I think they're incredibly important. And so I think that I'm not saying to compliment him when it's not true, but I am saying that if you notice something your husband is doing that you're really grateful for, you should vocalize that you're grateful for it. And not only that, but be grateful. Like there's something to that nowadays. A lot of women sort of begrudgingly do that or withhold words of affirmation. They don't tell their husband they're proud of them. They don't tell them thank you for doing things for them or doing things with them in mind. And because they go, oh, well, he's supposed to do that. Why should I thank him for it? And I think that's ridiculous. I think he needs to hear good things from you. You need to let him know that you admire him.
I agree. I'm going to need a sandwich and a word of affirmation.
Tina, I got a question on this.
Yeah.
So if that is the proper role, how do you see like the husband's role stacking up to that? Like, do you, because I think that in modern women think that, oh, well, he doesn't deserve all of that, or,
I feel like it's a man's duty to provide peace and security for his family. So he's on, his job is like peace, security, and providing as much as humanly possible. And I'm not saying a woman can't provide either. It's just, I think the responsibility for providing for that family is on the man's shoulders. So our job, I feel like, is the counter to that. It's the complement to it.
Yeah.
And that would be to, I think having a peaceful place for him to retreat to is incredibly important.
Yeah.
And so he takes a lot on his shoulders. When you look at how much, like I look at how much Nick does, and I see my job as doing the things that he's unable to do, or that he doesn't have the time to do because he is so busy, doing all of these other incredibly important jobs. And so I'm not saying that the guy is totally off the hook.
Yeah.
Women need a lot from the man too. I think that it's really important for us to know that we're secure in their love. We need to be intellectually connected to our spouse. That's incredibly important. And so, I mean, because a lot of times, especially depending on what period of life you're in, for women, sometimes you're in the midst of child rearing, and the most adult conversations you can have are going to be with your husband.
Yeah.
And it's important not to lose yourself in motherhood sometimes. I mean, motherhood is important, but you need to like hold on to whatever else is there in life as well. So I think the husband has an important role in that.
So I was on a plane back from Indianapolis to Charlotte this past weekend, and I was sitting beside a girl from Germany who was actually from Frankfurt, who comes to the Indianapolis 500, the Indy 500 every year. But we were just chatting, and I asked her what the dating scene was like in Germany. And one of the things that she responded with was like, oh, well, you know, the men don't want us to work and have careers. It's as if they're afraid we're going to take their jobs. And I just wasn't going to respond to that. It was just not worth my time. But I would be interested in how you would respond to a young woman talking like that, that feels that they can, you know, the career is super important, and if they can't have it, well, they've been done a disservice.
I feel like if you're supposed to have a career and you go after it and you fail at that, that's totally on you and not on society or men. And so if you're going after that career and that's the most important thing, that's great, but recognize what you're trading off for it. You only, biologically, you only have a certain amount of time. And that's the big thing that you've got going against you. So if you feel like your career is so important that you're willing to forego motherhood for it, that's fine. You're welcome to do that. But if you fail at it and it doesn't bring you the amount of satisfaction that you thought it was going to, that's not on men. That's on you. You made a stupid choice.
It harkens back to what I was saying earlier. We imagine that the destination will be so good and we'll be so fulfilled by getting to that destination. And oftentimes, it is not nearly what you imagine it to be, because you don't know what you don't know, and you can't think about the things that you don't know and what sacrifices you'll have to make.
So what you end up with is women in their 40s frantically trying to have kids because they realize that they forgot to check off that box.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds kind of mean of me to say, but I mean, come on. Take your biology into effect here. I mean, don't be a science denier.
It was so funny. We showed up when we went to Indy. So we did go to Indianapolis with Good Ranchers.
Great time.
Had a great time at the Indy 500. And it was cool. We showed up to get on the bus to go over to the race with everybody. And there was this young couple there. He's also got a show, Chris. Does some really interesting stuff on there. And he was there with his wife. And it was funny because his wife walked up and she goes, I love Tina on that. She goes, I listen to you guys' podcast. She goes, I love Tina. Every time Tina says something, when you guys are like trying to rein Tina in, I'm like, no, I'm with her. Why can't we do what she said?
Let her go.
Yeah, just let her go. Stop holding her back.
Sometimes I read the comments and people don't love what I have to say sometimes. So that's okay.
Well, Sarah
I'm
did.
fine.
Sarah
I have enough
loves
friends.
it.
I'm fine. I have enough friends. We're fine.
Well, listen, I think we're going to wrap this up right here. I think that's a good place to probably end. I'm sorry we didn't get to go to all 30 questions, probably because Christian was talking too much. I apologize. This is clearly all Christian's fault.
Can we ask one final question that I think is that the one that we skipped earlier? That I think there's value in it.
Which
in wrapping
one?
it up? The question of what was one of the hardest moments in your life that turned into something good?
All right. You want me to answer?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd like to go around. But
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. We'll end up with this. I will say that, there's been some, there's been some hard stuff personally and whatnot, that, we've gone through with, having kids and things like that. Luke almost died at one point when he was little. We lost a baby during pregnancy, but if we're talking about, something that was hard that turned into something good, as at the hardness level, it's nowhere near that stuff when you're sitting there like begging God for your son's life, and then he survives. That's obviously like the pinnacle of. However, I wish that none of that would have happened, right? Like it didn't
end up.
I don't.
It's not a good thing.
It's not that it's a good thing that happened. It was a good thing that he lived, right? And that was awesome. But if we're talking about something bad that happened, where I thought, what was the point? That you only found out later what the point was. It was probably when we ran for Congress and lost.
Allegedly.
And
I maintain
And-
that's one of my biggest conspiracy theories. Back to that one is that I don't believe we actually lost that race.
well, let me explain this, right? Let me explain this. So when I say one of the hardest moments, that obviously there's been a lot of things that have been harder, but the reason why that was a very hard moment is because that was over a year of our lives. That's how long it takes to run for that office. You don't just say, hey, I want to run, and then 3 months later, it's like over a year of our lives was dedicated toward praying about this and making sure, because I didn't want to do it. Praying about it and making sure it's what we were supposed to do, and going through all of these trials that we had to go through with paperwork issues and with fun. Like, I hate fundraising.
Being lied about by our own side.
The thing that will drive me from politics is having to fundraise. I absolutely despise sitting on a phone for literally 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, begging for money, right? Like, I hate doing it, and I had to do it for months. That part was miserable. The campaigning, and then having people that that like you've been friends with, that, oh, now they've decided they want to run too. So now you're a swamp creature, and you're a DC liberal, and you're a California
and they make
liberal.
up lies about you and your family.
And going through that crap, and then watching other people that you've been friends with forever tell you, oh yeah, buddy, we got your back. And then just, well, we think maybe we're going to support. And you're sitting here going, okay, all right, look, I know we were, called to do this. We're doing it. We're putting all the time. We're putting all the effort. You're missing a lot of family time. You're missing like stuff with work. And you're just fighting every single day to, put it out there. And there's pressure too, because a lot of people, they're fighting with you, right? You guys were fighting with us to try to make that happen. And then you get there on election night and you're winning. Like, you're winning. And all through election night, you're winning. And the next morning you wake up, you're winning. And then all of a sudden you aren't. And then you have crazy stuff happen. Like, again, I don't claim that I had it stolen from me, but I do think that the registrar in Henrico County has some explaining to do when a thumb drive gets mislabeled and 15,000 votes show up.
They found it in a drawer.
15,000 votes show up in the bluest county in the district, and lo and behold, it's enough to eat up your entire lead. Right? Like, stuff like that is frustrating. And again, I'm not saying it was stolen.
I am. It was stolen.
It was just really, really frustrating. So we're going through all of that, and we're sitting here, and we come after that, and I remember Tina and I thinking, why did we have to go through all of this to lose? Like, what was the point of going through all of this and what it cost us and everything else? Because it also cost me a job at one point. Like, I had to leave a job and find another one that I could do that was temporary. And then I didn't know what we were going to do after the campaign when we lost. I had to find a new job. And so we're dealing with all this stress. And then this last summer, I'm sitting around this table in here, and I'm looking around, and I'm looking over at you, and I'm seeing Christian here, and I'm seeing Hamilton here, and I'm thinking about Cody, who does our video editing. And it hit me all of a sudden in that moment that if I hadn't run, we would have never assembled the team that we did to work on that. And if I had won, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now. And so it was one of those moments where
you had to run, but you had to lose.
I had to run, but I had to lose in order to be set up for this moment right now. And I have never felt more sure, professionally, of where God was putting, myself, my family. I've never felt more sure that we are in the right place, doing the thing that we're supposed to be doing with the people that we should be doing it with, and that I want to do this with, than I am right now. And again, I had to run and I had to lose. It was the only possible way for all of the right factors to come into play to create what we're doing right now. So for me, that's the one where it's a hardest moment that I couldn't explain at the time. There was no rhyme or reason to it, but I look back now, and it is literally the best possible result that could have only happened through that hardship.
That's exactly, I was going to bring that one up too. So that's my answer too.
Again, like the destination, it was the journey that made you who you were, that gave you the additional skills that have helped you in this, journey that we're in right now. And the destination was not the end all be all.
Mm-hmm.
I've changed a lot over the last 4 years, like a lot. And at the time, I thought that my calling was to get you into DC. I thought my calling was to get you into the White House one day, but that was more much more long-term thinking. But I mean,
Oh,
you
the
know,
plan's still in place. I'm kidding.
I met Nick in high school, and I wasn't political. I was mildly conservative at best, but I was just more into history. But I became friends with Nick, and he pulled me into politics. And then I decided that I was going to change my career path, and I was going to study political science. Spoiler alert, don't do that. don't do that. If you're going to go to college, study like law or engineering or medicine or something like that. Don't study the liberal arts, because it's not worth it. Even though I have a political science degree and I, theoretically work in politics, I don't need the degree. But anyway, I had this like idea my whole life that I wanted to teach history. And I'm glad I didn't do that, because the history field in colleges is a disaster right now. But I changed because I met Nick. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go into politics. And then my last semester in college, we managed to get Nick to run for the legislature. And then the incumbent dropped out. And so Nick gets in unchallenged in the nomination, which is it's a hard thing to do, to unseat an incumbent.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a doorway opened up when, the previous guy dropped out of the race and Nick was able to get in without opposition. That was phenomenal. And then he goes to Richmond, and then he starts making a name for himself within like the first week. Unintentionally. And then, it's obvious that he becomes a good public speaker and debater within his first term in Richmond. And then he runs for Senate, but he loses that race. But I'm thinking to myself, like, this actually opens up another pathway, because that same election that we get wiped out in the Senate race, our incumbent Congressman Dave Bratt loses his seat. And so now I'm like, well, that was the plan all along. Was in my mind, I didn't really tell a lot of people, but my mind was, the plan was Nick was going to be in Richmond until the congressional seat opened up, and then he'd run for that and he'd win that. And then I would find a way to get him on a presidential ticket one day. And then we would get into the White House eventually. That was like literally the 30-year-long plan in my mind. And as crazy as it sounds, understand, step 1 happened. Step 2 happened. Step 3 didn't happen the way that I planned, but in some ways it was accelerated. And so I was like, this is going to happen. And then he runs, he gets the nomination. I'm like, oh man, things are coming together here. And then we lose. And we lose by 1 point.
Out of 450,000 votes.
Out of almost 500,000 votes cast, we lose by like 8,000 votes or something like that. And I'm sitting there on election night, and we've talked about this before on this show, and I'm like upset and angry, and I'm the most depressed that I've ever been in my entire life. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm 26 and my life is already over, because I had my life planned out until I was in my 50s. I was going to be the man behind the man. I was going to be that
pulling the string.
Yeah, minister without portfolio or whatever they call it. You know what I mean? Like the hand of the king. Like I was, and it's never going to happen now. And so I'm like, I made all these plans with my life, and you might think it's stupid and dumb to make all these plans when you're in your 20s, but I had all these plans, and the plan was to go to DC with Nick, and that was going to be my career. And then it wasn't going to happen. And I'm sitting here like, great. So I'm going to go back to my, my job, commuting 2 hours every single day, and, just live the boring, miserable life that I'd previously been living. And I just thought, I thought my life was over. And then this happened. And I didn't expect this to happen. I had no expectation that we would be sitting here, and that thousands of people that I will never even be able to meet, every single one of them, would listen to the words that we're speaking. And they're all good people. I read almost every single one of these comments on YouTube, and yeah, there's trolls, but most of it is positive stuff. And I obviously, I read the chats that we have in our circle community as well. Most of it's positive stuff. Almost all of it's positive stuff. And none of it would have happened if we hadn't run and lost. And I remember at the time thinking my life was over. And now I'm sitting here like, my plan that I had where I was going to go to DC, no, I don't need to go to DC. In fact, since then, I have now come to again, because I've changed a lot over the last 4 years. I've come to now realize that I don't belong in DC, because you know what? DC is unsalvageable at this point. There is no saving it. It's gonna blow up and crash. And I'm actually glad that I'm not going to be in ground zero, the epicenter of the disaster that's coming. Because if we're going to save the country, it's going to be through the states. It's not going to be by electing good guys to go to DC. If anything, we can elect good guys that will prevent things from getting worse than it might otherwise be. But a catastrophe's coming. We've talked about that at length. And I'm glad I'm not going to be there. And then instead, I'm going to be here. So
I will keep my answer relatively short.
Yeah.
Once Christian's plan, got hit pause, then my plan was instituted. Anyway, no, the hardest thing that I've ever experienced in my life is I moved from North Carolina to Virginia for a job that I learned a tremendous amount from. But while I was in that job, I was very unhappy, not because of the people there or the job, whatever it was, but I didn't feel like that is where I was supposed to be. And that was, it created a lot of internal turmoil. But I would pray about it, and I felt the Holy Spirit always say, stay right here. And it's not time to leave yet. And I'd talk to friends and family, and they were like, you need, maybe it's time to move on. Lord say, stay right here. It's not time to leave yet. And, my hope in that moment had been, well, I need to move to DC to work for another political organization as a videographer, as a video editor, whatever. And that, I was look at job listings, never find anything that was, really suited me. And I was in Florida sitting on a beach in November of 2019, like, God, what do you have for me next? Like, this is not working out. And in December of 2019, Nick announced he was running for Congress. That I got to see you speak at the Spotsylvania Second Amendment event. And then I reached out to someone I had met at CPAC 5 years later, asking if they could connect me with your campaign manager. And then that was on a Wednesday. And by the next Monday, we had a contract signed and I was, leaving. But like, had I actually gotten another job and moved to DC, I would not have been able to move to Culpeper to join the campaign. But I was still in Fredericksburg, able to drive back and forth in a position to still take that opportunity. But that was a rough 2 years for me because I didn't know anybody in Virginia, didn't really want to put down deep roots because I never planned to stay there for a long time. So that was a tough time, but the Lord worked it out. And like, the Lord was like, hey, I'm going to set out your steps before you. And it's one of those things that was so incredible that only God can take the credit for. So it was also a really rewarding experience. But yeah. Once Christian's plan was done, my plan kicked in, and here we are.
You never know. I mean, sometimes the path looks weird to you. It's like, wait, this isn't what I planned. How does this make sense? And then when you look back, you're like, oh, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we want to thank everyone for joining. We want to thank everyone for the questions they asked. Hopefully we got to some of the questions that you might have personally had. And if we didn't, well, there's always next time. And if you go to our community over there in Circle, you can ask some questions there and maybe we'll get to it there, or maybe even set up a whole new episode.
Yeah.
But in the future, if you don't see Hamilton, it's not because he's gone, right? He's doing other things in addition to this now.
Unfortunate, but
yeah, he can't always be. It was good to have you back on.
Thank you. It was a fun time.
I was just being nice. Anyway, no, once again, thank you all for joining us. And thank you to Good Ranchers for sponsoring. Again, go over there, check out that King box, right? Did you list off all those steaks? Come on, free bacon with the entire life of your subscription. That they're going to give you free bacon. Why are you still here? GoodRanchers.com, promo code Nick. Once again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next episode.